Hey guys, me Ben. Before we get started with the show, I wanted to talk to you about a little company called Breathe Fire Apparel. They're not just about clothing, they're about igniting your inner dragon. From their signature logo tees to the audacious fuck the easy route shirts, they're all about embracing challenges and looking fierce while doing it. Plus, every purchase supports our wounded veterans, so you're not just upgrading your wardrobe, you're making a difference. So if you're ready to breathe fire in your fitness journey and beyond, head over to Breathe Fire Apparel and gear up. Use Benny10 at your checkout to get that discount of 10% on your order. That's Benny10 at Breathe Fire Apparel to get 10% off your first order. Now, enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the show. With you as always is me, Ben. Tonight I'm joined by a very important guest, Nate Dressel. Nate Dressel is the owner of Frontier Coffee Company as well as the Boldly Patriotic Podcast. Nate, first of all, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, Nate pumps me up. We'll get into it a little later, but his podcast, he has pretty traditional values that I think a lot of Americans stand with, and it's like it's a breath of fresh air sometimes to hear people talk that way. And then your coffee company, it's good stuff. I got my order coming in tonight, so it's solid.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, Nate, talk to me. Tell me a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up, what all that was like.
Sure. So I grew up in New Hampshire and Vermont, up in New England. Uh, Super outdoorsy kid. Like grew up trout fishing with my grandfather. Always wanted to be out on the river fishing, and just outdoors all the time. Mountain biking, hiking, running. Uh, did the Boy Scout thing forever. Um, and then when I graduated high school, that was 2003. I graduated high school. So, 9/11 had happened and I was really torn. My grandfather was a World War II guy and absolutely looked up to him. So I was really torn about, do I want to go to college right after high school or am I going to go get my GWAT on? Um, and ultimately I decided I was going to try college. So I went to college in Vermont for a year after I graduated. And then I was basically like, yep, time to go to the infantry.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, 1 year up at college, and then I signed up for the military with a infantry contract. The only thing I had guaranteed in my contract was airborne school. That was 2004 that I left for basic training. Uh, Went through infantry basic, and I was in the Charlie platoon, which I didn't know anything at the time. So they called it an 11X contract. So X for MOS is undefined.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't know what you were going to do necessarily, right?
Yeah, like I signed up for the infantry. I thought all I wanted to do was be a little green army guy. And they're like, all right, Charlie platoon, you guys are mortars. It's like, what's that? Like, tubes and heavy mortar
Yeah,
things.
grunting
Like,
and throwing shit. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I was like, is that like a little green army guy? Like, kinda, but not. So I was super pissed off that was my lot in the infantry. Uh, but whatever. Went through the mortar, 2 weeks of mortar school, and went to airborne school with orders to go to 82nd to a mortar platoon. And I got snagged at airborne school by the special forces recruiter. They had at the time they had an E8 recruiter just kind of sniffing around the barracks and stuff.
Yeah, like kind of hovering, and then they give you a little brief or something. They're like, "Hey, you want to check this out?"
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. It was just like, I mean, I was an E2, I think, going to airborne school, and this E8 came up. He's like, "Oh, you got really good PT scores. You should come do this instead." I'm like, literally had never. I don't. I mean, I think I'd heard of like the movie Green Berets from John Wayne, but like, I had no idea what a Green Beret was. So it was like, okay, you're an E8, I guess. Whatever you tell me to, Sergeant. So that's how I ended up at SF selection, and like,
Well, real quick before you dive into that, because I mean, that's a lot, But how are your thoughts going into all that? You're you're joining up, you go through basic, you go through, mortar school, and then you go through airborne school, and then you're going to that. Like, how was it going through basic and mortar and airborne? Like, were you pumped about it? I mean, obviously you were pissed about the getting mortars, but like, was it a good experience for you, or was it just meh?
I mean, I was pretty fit when I showed up to basic, and I was fat as fuck when I graduated.
A lot of people do that. The fit guys always, they gain weight there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a little disappointing. I was like, really? This is the infantry? But I mean, that was over 20 years ago. I mean, I think I was excited to go be part of the GWAT. It was 2004 at the time when I joined.
It was hot and heavy at that point.
Yeah,
it was going on.
Yeah, it was early on in the GWAT. I had friends that had joined. Like, I had friends that went to basic training, between their junior and senior year of high school. So those dudes went to basic training, did their like delayed entry thing, and then they graduated high school and they're like, "Cool, man, see you in Fallujah." By the time I got to basic training, I already had high school friends that had been hanging out over there for like 12 months. So I was anxious to get going. Like, all right, cool, whatever. Going to the 82nd Mortar Platoon. This is going to be just fine. But it was a blessing for my life that whatever that SF guy that pulled me over, that became my new direction. But honestly, like, because I never left the training mentality, I was always a junior guy. I just Forrest Gumped my way through the next, 3.5 years of the qualification course.
Yeah, just whatever you tell me to. Yeah, just.
I mean, essentially, like, I was a gray man through it, and they were like, "Run!" Like, how far until we tell you to stop? All right, sounds good to me. So
that's a lot easier to do when you don't know what's going on. You're just kind of like, all right, whatever, and then you go. That's definitely like a better mentality to go into it as.
I mean, I'm not going to say that it was easy, but even at the time, I remember I could tell this is easier for me than a bunch of the prior service guys that were in the Q course, and they'd already experienced comfort. They had homes, they had families, they had stuff outside of just living under a rucksack. Whereas, like, that's all I knew for my first 4 years of the military.
How was that Q course for you? Like, well, first off, how was selection for you?
Selection, I mean, it was hard. You're tired, you're exhausted, you're sore, you're beat up. Lucky for me, because I ended up in that 18 X-ray program, like, I was there with my best friends at the time.
Oh, did they get a couple of guys from you too? Like, there was like a couple that came from that class, or?
Yeah, I mean, so the 18 X-ray program, they called it SOPC, Special Operations Preparation and Conditioning. Mm-hmm. I think the X-rays had something ridiculous, like a 90% pass rate when they went to selection.
Oh shit!
And, I mean, there were probably like at least 40 guys from my SOPC class that were all in the same selection class. So, I mean, we had fun. It was hard, but I was actually talking to a buddy about this just yesterday. The one event that stood out as just like the most miserable one was the final ruck march, like your very last thing at selection. And I remember the worst part about it being Camp McCall used to have this, the chow hall used to just be this outdoor pavilion where they'd, throw you some slop or throw you some MREs. You sit outside at these picnic tables and eat. So, and it was this big, giant gravel yard in front of it. So you're finishing this final ruck march. It's whatever it is, 20 miles, 24 miles. I don't remember. It's long, but, you come into the gravel yard and you see the chow hall and you see whatever guys have already finished. They're just hanging out. Their boots are off. They're eating. They're relaxing. I'm like, yes, I'm there. I'm done. My bloody nubs can't walk another step. And then the course keeps going.
Oh my God.
Like, you go right past the chow hall pavilion, do like another mile loop through the woods near it, and then you finally come back. But I remember like walking past the chow hall and just being like, no.
Fuck, that sucks.
Like
That's
that was
that's
my
always that when they make you do that shit. That's the false summit or
yeah
whatever.
yeah.
It sucks.
It was absolutely a false summit. I distinctly remember that being probably my lowest moment at selection, and I wasn't about to just drop my ruck and be like I'm done, but I was just like they got me one last time. Oh my god. So, but yeah, that's uh that's how I ended up in special forces as Forrest Gumping.
That's cool though. Did
Yeah.
you get done with selection? Obviously, you go to the Q course. For those don't know, listening, selection's just to get to begin the process of becoming a Green Beret, and then
Correct.
Q course is your basically your pipeline of training to be a Green Beret and your MOS qualification and any additional schools.
Yeah.
Am I right so far, Nate? Or
Yeah, that's correct. So
okay.
selection, I think it was a 24. It was either 24 or 27 day. I think 24 day when I went through it. And that's just the gateway to even get into the qualification course.
Right.
Once you get through selection, you have small unit tactics. You have your MOS specific course. So like your weapon sergeant, your demo guy, your
Mm-hmm.
communications, your medic. You got
What was
language.
yours?
I was a medic.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a longer one, right? It's a
Yeah. So
pretty lengthy one.
that one's a full year doing the medic course. Um, yeah, you got language school, you've got the survival, evasion, resistance, escape, your POW school. So it's a long time.
Did you enjoy all that stuff? I mean, that from what I've heard, it's not gentleman's course, but it's not as strict, but you're still being evaluated that whole time. How was that for you?
I mean, it's not as strict as maybe like a big army school, but it's definitely no gentleman's course when you are a junior non-qualified SF guy in
Ooh,
that
yeah,
course.
you're going in as like a specialist or something, right?
I think when I went to selection, I was a E. I think it was an E3 by that point, maybe could have been an E2 still. I don't know. I think it was an E3 at that point, and then I went to PLDC and BNOC. For anyone who's old enough to know what that is,
Yeah, you're
that's
dating yourself real hard here, Nate.
yeah. So I went to PLDC and BNOC as a private, and then after that got promoted to specialist. So throughout the remainder of the Q course, I was at E4.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a grueling course. Like even in the medical course, we're doing trauma medicine and eventually clinical medicine, and surgical, and everything. But every single morning, we're out there smoking our balls doing PT. We're doing ruck marches. We're doing, PT could be running, could be rucking, could be patient carries, and it's legitimately hard PT for the entire time that you're there. And then a lot of times, what they would do for the medic course, like we'd go out and do our morning PT, and then we'd have to stick IVs on each other. We do like jugular sticks, we do saphenous sticks, so like leg IVs, and
On
all of the
each
weird,
other?
yeah.
Oh my lord.
So all of the weird places, like not your arm, but all of these other weird places, we'd be out there sweating, miserable, and finish up the ruck or whatever, and then have to stick each other, and then we go to class all day.
You got to be exhausted going through all that, right? Like after you're doing all that every day, and then you got to go sit through not only important shit, but like stuff you're gonna actually get tested on, use later on, like all that.
Yeah, yeah. The medic course is academically pretty grueling. I think I think being so young and never leaving the training, like never leaving that training mentality though, or not knowing that there's anything different in the army, you're just kind of like, this is just what life is in the army.
Yeah.
So you get used to it. It's not the same as like you and I having to go back through something like that now.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. What what was the hardest part of that entire thing, would you say?
The entire Q course,
Yeah.
probably Russian language. That shit makes no sense.
What you back up? Okay. So you get you go to Monterey, right, for your school,
Nope.
or
No,
oh,
no,
you
no.
didn't
They
do it
don't.
there?
No, they don't send the Green Berets to any place fun. They do it all right there at Fort
Oh
Bragg.
my God! And you're learning Russian that entire time.
Yeah.
That had to be fun.
So the medics used to go down to Fort Sam Houston to do their medic training. Uh, and I think a long, long time ago they sent guys out to DLI in Monterey. And honestly, I think the reason that they stopped is too many medics got pregnant down at Fort Sam Houston, and probably the same thing out at DLI. So they brought it all back to Fort Bragg.
Hell yeah!
Um,
Jeez.
yeah, Russian, dude. I did not understand. I was terrible at Russian, absolutely terrible. So that that
Is it
turned
an
into
accelerated course basically, or is it? How does
yeah. I
that
mean,
work?
so excuse me. Um, at the time that we were going through, it was 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. I think Saturday was like maybe 8 to 1 or something. Um, yeah, 6 days a week in Russian class every single day with a Russian teacher. It was supposed to be a 6 month course, and I turned that one into that was the one thing that I had to recycle is one extra month of Russian. So, yeah, and I was still not very good at it. But
Where did you go from there? Like once you get done with all your stuff, you get all certified and everything, you finally don the green beret. Where are you headed to after that for your first duty station?
I ended up at a First Special Forces group in Washington State at Fort Lewis.
Yeah, that was my first one up there too. It's nice up there.
Yeah, who were you with?
Guys, don't mind us. Me and Nate are recovering from COVID-25.
Yeah.
I was with a chem comp or a chem battalion up there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
So
just Seaburn. So we're on North Fort, but we would always, drive by you guys. We had a chem detachment down there with the group, and
okay.
then we just always saw you. I met my wife up there. Actually, she was a medic too up at the 593rd Expeditionary. So
Okay.
they were kind of like right around the corner from you guys.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to miss. It's giant chain link fence with black tarp on it, at least when I was there. So
Yeah.
did you enjoy your time up there? Was it good? Like, how was it getting to your first team?
Uh, so it was awesome. I loved being at first group. I didn't I didn't know that I was going to, but I did. I had a great time there. When I showed up there, I thought I was super cool. Just got my Green Beret, just graduated. I'm a studly freedom fighter. So I showed up to my company, went into the B team room to meet the sergeant major, and it's this like 5'4" Vietnamese dude named Jerry Nguyen. And Jerry Nguyen has a super thick Vietnamese accent still. So I come in there with like cool guy hair, this brand new E5 Green Beret, and Jerry Nguyen looks at me. He's like, "Why the fuck you have that hair?" It's like, I don't know, Sergeant Major. I thought we were allowed to have hair. And he's like, "Fuck you, new guy. Go shave your head." It's like, God damn it. So the first thing that I had to do after meeting Jerry Nguyen was go shave my head. And then I go back in there and he's like, "You look like an idiot.
Oh
Go
my
meet your."
God.
I'm like, okay. So he's like, "Go meet your team sergeant. They're out at the range." And they're like, literally showed up there, got told to shave my head, shaved my head, told I looked like an idiot, and then went over to the range where my team sergeant was also like, "How the fuck do you have your head shaved?" But I think that was January of '08. And we were getting ready to mob to Iraq. I think we left in like April of '08, maybe.
That's a pretty quick turnaround for just getting to the team. Were you able to mesh pretty quick with them, or?
Yeah, yeah. So it was actually that part I think was pretty easy because they're just like, "We're deploying. We don't have time to fuck with you. You know, we're at the range. We're gonna start working with you. We're gonna start learning how to work as a team." We're they were thrilled to have a second medic because they were getting ready to deploy with only one. So that was actually really easy to fit into the team and just start rolling with them.
Why So just a inside baseball thing. You selected Russian. Why didn't they send you to 10th group?
All right, so so that's a good question. 10th group was my first choice. Growing up in New Hampshire and Vermont, I love skiing, still love skiing. So I'm like, man, all I want to do is get stationed in Colorado so I can go skiing.
Yeah.
So back then during the Q course, like kind of wild to think back then, computers sucked. And what sucked even more was the special forces dudes trying to use computers. So uh, basically, like every so often, we'd be standing in some formation, like me and all the guys in my graduating class. Um, they'd pass a sheet around, and they'd be like, "Hey, check your name, check your MOS, and check your language assignment." And mine kept coming around with like Dressel, 18 Delta, Farsi. I was like, no, I don't want to go to fifth
No,
group, and
damn.
I don't want to learn how to speak Farsi. So I just kept like Russian. Russian will guarantee that I go to 10th group. So I kept writing Russian. Like I probably did it like a dozen times. Every time this list came around, I just crossed it off and wrote Russian on it. Like, and then eventually one day the list comes back around and it says Dressel, 18 Delta, Russian. I'm like, yes,
Fuck yeah.
I'm going to 10th group. So yeah, then graduation comes and they're like, all right, everyone come up here and get your orders. I'm like, what? This isn't 10th group? And they're like, oh yeah, first group needs medics, so that's where you're going instead. But at that was 2008 that we were deploying, so it was like pretty busy during GWAT. So having medics on the team took precedence over language assignment.
Yeah.
But
And
I mean,
it turns out a blessing, right? Because you ended up liking it up there.
Yeah, and I met my wife out there, so.
Hell yeah.
But man, I was like, I worked so hard every time that list came around, just crossing it off and be like, no, only to have it not work. So.
So you get up there, you're mobbing pretty quick. That's what, 4 months, and you're in Iraq. How did that go for your first deployment?
It was pretty good. It was definitely an eye opener. Obviously, your first deployment to a combat zone is like nothing you can't really prepare for it.
Yeah.
Grew up in New England, spent however many years at Fort Bragg, and then all of a sudden you're in downtown Samarra, Iraq. It was good. We had we actually lived in an old casino in downtown Samarra. It was all walled off and stuff, and we had a I guess it was like a platoon size element of the Iraqi army and Iraqi National Police, this kind of conglomerate of like high speed Iraqi dudes that worked with us. They were all super good dudes, loved working with them. And then, as a team medic, all the guys on the team are important, but you kind of have to be ready all the time for anything. So we also shared that casino with a company minus of 101st guys. So we had an aid station there that we would work with them. Obviously, if they needed us, we were there to help them, vice versa. I think the first like true U.S. casualty that I had was it was a platoon sergeant from that 101st company. He had taken they called them RKG-3 grenades. It was a formed penetrating grenade. Kind of hard to explain. Basically, they would throw these things out from windows and had a parachute that would come out and shoot a formed penetrator that could cut through the Humvees, cut through the MRAPs, and that's what this guy got hit with.
Damn, I've heard of the foreign penetrators, but I never heard of one like that jumped out like that. That's insane.
Yeah, they were pretty wild. So we had these RKG, I think it was RKG-3 grenades that were coming in from Syria that, when they put these like 13, 14-foot T-walls in there, they would see our convoys coming and throw those things over it. It's got this little stabilizing parachute that points the grenade down and deploys that form penetrator. So that was we ended up losing that guy. We ended up losing him, and that sucked. And that was probably like a month or so into the trip there. I was actually back at the team house when I heard the call come over the radio, like, "Hey, 101st guys got hit. They have a casualty. They're moving back to base." And the thing that there's a few things. Like, I was obviously pretty rocked being a new medic, a junior E5, first combat deployment, and losing a guy. The thing that really was like still sticks with me, the medic that was with them out there was this 18-year-old kid, and I was only 23 at the time, maybe 24. The medic that they had was this like 18-year-old kid, had just got out of basic 68
he's
whiskey.
like a brand new guy. Just
Didn't know what to do. So, when this smoking truck came rolling in, the platoon sergeant's still sitting up front in the TC seat. Like, I see the hole through the truck. I open up the back door of the truck. It was an MRAP. I open up the back door. I'm like, "Where's the casualty?" Expecting that this medic's
that he's laid out there or something.
Yeah, like, "Oh, he's up front. He's got a tourniquet on."
Oh my god.
So, like, long story short, this form penetrator goes through his arm, like kind of axillary wound, and then cuts diagonally down through his body and exits out of his hip. And he hadn't been assessed properly. He hadn't been pulled out. The medic saw where the entry was and put a loose tourniquet over the uniform. So however long it took for them to get back to base to, get to me and the other 18 Delta and whatever other medical providers were there, was like, man, I don't know if he would have made it if we had been on the X, but I know there would have been a better shot.
For sure. You guys at least had better training to deal with that. I mean, that kid, bless his heart, he probably had been in the Army for all of 6 months or some shit,
Yeah.
Like, and now he's trying to deal with that.
Yeah, so that was actually a big eye opener to me. I was like, wow, what I've been given as far as training and the experience that you get in the 18 Delta course is, I mean, second to none medical training. And then you think about what is the majority of the Army's, medics, what is their skill set, and are they equipped to deal with the stuff that we're dealing with in actual combat zones? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Like, we're putting kids out there that are just not. And I don't know that you can prepare enough people for it, but we're putting kids out there that just aren't prepared for it.
I think, not sorry to jump you, Nate. I think for any type of combat experience, whether it's engineers, medics, like CBurn, any job, period, on the job training is like gonna trounce any type of training they can try to come up with in AIT or a specialized school or whatever. I think it is so hard to make it known how important your fucking job is, and and that's a shame, but that's how it runs, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and then so when you deal with a situation like medics losing their own platoon sergeant and they're the ones working on them, you have the follow-on leadership problem of, all right, this 18-year-old kid just showed up to the desert, dude got smoked, he was the first one working on him. Like, how do we make it so that this kid is potentially still an asset to the unit, to the mission, and can, maybe hopefully function in the future? Taking him aside and just berating him for every single thing that he did wrong is not the right answer. I mean, that kid's already, they're beating themselves up enough already. So I think we ended up having him working in the aid station for a while after that. And, it's when you're that young and that inexperienced and your platoon sergeant gets smoked and you're the one on the scene, like, I don't know, you have to coddle them a bit and give them the love and like nurse that private back to some sort of health. Whether, I mean, hopefully that they can be an asset to the rest of the trip. Um,
Hopefully, it's a learning tool and not
yeah,
a crutch.
yeah. And I have no idea where that kid is now. I mean, hopefully, hopefully he went on and did great things, but who knows? So,
How long were you over there for?
I think I was over there. It was supposed to be a 9-month trip. I think I was over there for like 4 or 5 months. My team sergeant, he came from Ranger Bat, and it's like, Nate, as soon as we get back, you're going to Ranger School. All right, cool, man. And then I think it was like September, October. It's like, hey, man, I got you a Ranger School slot. It's like, all right, sounds good. Thinking, he got a slot for when we're home. It's like, pack your shit. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, it's pretty quiet here, so you're going to the next class. It's like, seriously? So I think my team had like, I don't know, 3 months left on the deployment, and I packed my bags and showed up to Ranger School like a week after landing from Iraq.
Damn, that's kind of
So,
it's kind of dog shit. Like to just jump into that right after the deployment.
it was something.
Yeah. How was that when you go to Ranger School? How does that go for you?
Ranger School sucked. So full disclosure about Ranger School, I ruptured my my plantar fascia the very last night of mountains. So I spent 50 something days at Ranger School, and I'm not a Ranger School graduate.
Damn it.
Yeah, but man, it sucks. I think it's a good school. It's a leadership school. Like Ranger School is not a tactical school. What it does is it teaches privates, it teaches young leaders how to be stronger leaders. Like gives them that confidence to grab somebody by the scruff of their uniform. Be like, I need you here right now doing X, Y, and Z. So it teaches definitive leadership. So I think it is actually a really great school for young soldiers to go through.
I think that's an important skill, regardless of if you go to Ranger School or not, to like actually develop that and I think people develop it without Ranger School, but that I'm glad it teaches that of like, hey, sometimes you gotta like actually take fucking charge and like do your shit,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's time to just grab that other person and be like, you here, do this.
Yes.
So, but like I think that's probably my longest like military disappointment that still aches at me. I'm like, oh, so close.
Yeah. Were you able? So you did when you got back, did the team kind of give you shit for it?
Not really. Like we just got ready. We were getting ready to deploy again, so we were pretty much back to back. Like they got back from Iraq. We had a little bit of team restructuring as far as some dudes were getting out or going on SWIC tours or whatever. Got the new guys, and then we left for the Philippines.
Oh damn! Was it like a J set or was it?
No, that was a 10-month deployment down in Holo Island.
Oh okay.
So down in Muslim Mindanao.
How was that?
It was awesome.
It's kind of different, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're down in this little island called Holo. It's 600 something miles south of Manila, down in Muslim Mindanao. So at the time there was this group called Abu Sayyaf group, and it was an offshoot of Al Qaeda. So there was all sorts of like improvised explosive training going on kind of down in these islands in the Philippines. And obviously, so we had an interest in that, but also all these Muslim factions were fighting the Filipino government, whom we're allies with. So it was an interesting trip.
I think people that, just a side note, I think a lot of people don't know that Al Qaeda and a lot of the terrorist groups have these training camps and offshoots in like the South Pacific or Southeast Asia, that type of stuff that is going on that really people don't know about.
Yeah, they're all over Southeast Asia. We actually, we ended up losing 2 guys on that trip too. 2 SF guys on that trip unfortunately got killed in an IED. which, Philippines got maybe a little ticker at the bottom of the news, and like really people didn't know that we were operating down there for so long.
Yeah, that's
So
fucking tough. Did that was 10 months you said?
yeah, I think it was about 10 months on that one.
Yeah, so you're already at like 15 plus 2 years. You're like at 3 or 4 years in now at this point, right? Like,
So I joined in 04. The Philippines trip was running 2009 into 2010. So
okay. So you've
that
been
was
in for a little bit. Are you getting a feel of the team flow and like knowing your role and stuff, or was it still kind of a learning curve?
no, I think by that point I was pretty confident in my spot on the team. Uh, After Iraq, actually, the senior medic on the team, he was done. So I became the senior medic, with what, 1 year of team time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, going to the Philippines, I was this team senior medic. And I think I was pretty confident in what I was doing. Like I was confident in my medicine, confident tactically, and it was a good spot. I did end up I left active duty after that trip. Um, Tons of people left active duty after that trip. Actually, it was between losing the two guys and just having like just absolute feckless command. Um, my team sergeant at the time was just this absolute dirtbag. Stayed in his room the entire time. Like just he was a known dirtbag throughout the SF community. I have no idea how he even ended up getting a team sergeant spot. Like he was just disheartening to the whole team. He had So it was this guy named Jim Cottonbaugh. He had been an 18 Delta for like 25 years or something. Um, he was actually the 18 Delta preceptor when I did my trauma rotations up in Richmond, Virginia. So I had met him years prior before he came to my team, and he was a shitbag back then too. But so like he becomes my team sergeant. I'm like, really? That dude's still around? But anyways, like he was a disheartening person to have as a team leader. And then our company leadership was this dude named Scott Malone uh, and another dude named Scott Suda. So Scott Malone was the company commander. Scott Suda was the company sergeant major. And they were just absolute human garbage. Um, so like there was one of the really fucked up things about having Scott Malone as the company commander while we were operating in the Philippines, and we had two dudes get smoked, was his wife was Filipino and she was running for a political position up close to Manila.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think that really influenced our response or our lack of response after losing two dudes. Um, was Scott's wife's Filipino political aspirations. It's like, and it happens all the time. People have shitty deployments, shitty leadership, and after those trips, they're just like, dude, I can't do this anymore. So one of my kind of breaking points, and when we went to the Philippines, I wasn't thinking about leaving active duty. I was like, man, it's kind of cool. I'm 26 years old at the time, like just doing studly shit,
Yeah, that's
being a
bad.
Green
I mean, it's
Beret.
badass story. It writes itself. Yeah.
So we're in the Philippines. I'm running obviously our med clinic for our guys and for the Filipino troops that we're working with, but I'm also running civilian med clinic to, build goodwill with our neighbors down there. And I forget what the case was. It was some funky skin condition or something that some Filipino lady came in with. It's like I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find it in any of the books. I could not figure it out. So I went to my team sergeant, who again had been an 18 Delta forever, and I was like, "Hey Jim, can you take a look at this case with me? Like I don't know, man." Uh, and his response was, "Oh, I dumped that shit when I became a team sergeant." It's like, wait a minute. Your response as the team leader or the team sergeant to the 18 Delta after you've supposedly done this job for 2 decades is I dumped all that shit when I became the team sergeant. It's like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah,
You lazy piece of shit.
That's a lazy motherfucker. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was a notorious shitbag, but that was kind of like, that was before we lost the guys. And I was just like, really? this is who gets promoted in this organization.
That's a big,
Interesting.
I mean, that's across the Army. You get these guys that get lazy with their rank, and
Yeah.
then you're like, well, if this is who the leadership is, why the fuck would I even try at this point? Why would
Yeah.
I stay in this organization?
Yeah. So that was kind of like my first real eye opener. Like, huh, this is who's getting promoted. And then we lost the guys, and like the command team was just spineless douchebags. And yeah, so after that trip, I was like, all right, I'm gonna let this contract run out. And I ended up going straight into guard, like the National Guard Special Forces unit, and did that for a long time. But
So you get out at that point, it's like 2010 or something,
yeah,
2011.
April 2010.
Yeah. So what do you do the reserves, you jump over to that. It's like where you jump into 19th or 20th to be SF still, or?
Yeah, I went straight into 19th Group in Washington State. They had an SF guard company up there. So I was still living in Washington, still with 19th Group, which was pretty much just the entire company that had left First Group. I was like, oh, hey, you guys are here too.
That's kind of nice, because then you're like, oh, it's all the boys. We're back.
Yeah. So it was kind of nice. Like, it was pretty laid back for a long time. I went back and did another Philippines trip for a few months, did a couple J sets with them, and kind of moved through a bunch of positions. I ran their special operations recruiting for a while. They have a kind of an in-house pre-selection where we put guys through a 4-day trial called SFRE, Special Forces Readiness Evaluation. So I got to run that for a while. I spent 12 years in 19th Group, I think.
Were you what were you doing for your regular job while you're doing all that, or was it AGR, or how'd it work?
So I did a lot of it was on long-term ADOS. Yeah. So I think I racked up like almost six more active duty years in that 12-year period.
That's good. I mean, that's, for those that don't know, ADOS, like, it's putting you on active duty orders to work for the Guard or Reserve, and it basically builds your federal time up for your retirement, because you want to hit the 20-year mark. And for Nate, he was already at, what I think we said 5 or 6 years.
Five and a half ish when I left active, and then did another 6-ish active for 19th.
Yeah. So you're racking up that time. Were you doing another side job or something, or are you working somewhere else in the meantime, or?
So I did a lot of stuff, man. I was a professional triathlete for 5 years. So I ran Ironman, half Ironman, and Olympic triathlons all over the world. Coached athletes. Was on the All Army triathlon team, the All Army, not endurance team, the All Army. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. What is the orienteering?
Oh, the orienteering. Okay.
I was on the team, which was also just like goofy part-time orders, but they sent us to Europe a couple times, like competed in the World SISM competition for orienteering. It's like the World Championship military thing.
That's badass, though. That's kind of fun, and it's well, like, I like fitness and stuff. I like running, especially. Was it in the past couple of years, I've been getting into longer distance stuff, like not that crazy, but like half marathons and stuff. And I find it takes up. I got 4 kids, so it takes up a bit of my time.
Yeah.
Did you find that it took up a lot? Like, was it exhausting, or did you enjoy most of it?
Both. I mean, so I think I had started racing triathlons. Somebody dragged me to a triathlon in the Q course. And like,
bastard.
I know. So they dragged me to the sprint triathlon back in 2006, and I kind of got into it a little bit. The first one was miserable. Like, it was only a sprint, and I was puking. I was in the Q course, so I was fit, but this was totally different.
Yeah, but that's I mean, it's 3 different events that are very different from each other, and you're like, what the fuck?
So, I spent from 2006 to 2012 just kind of racing them for fun, and I got pretty good. Like, I was, always
You
I
had to
was at
be if you were in the teams, for the Army.
well, so I didn't end up on the Army teams, I think, until right around 2013 or when I got my pro license. But yeah, I was racing half Ironmans in 2011 and 12 and doing pretty good for the age group level, but I couldn't swim. Like I I muscled my way through the water and just like fought it as hard as I could trying to be a fast swimmer, and then I'd get out of the water exhausted. So 2000 the summer or I'm sorry, the winter between of 2012 going into 13, I got a swim coach, like a professional swim coach. It's like, all right, I'm close enough that I can see the professional. You have to get a license. You have to meet all these qualifications. It's like, I'm close enough that I can see the professional license. Like, I can get it, but I need to learn how to swim. And the swim coach that I got, she was amazing. She had qualified when she was 15 years old, I think, to go to the 1980 Olympics,
Damn.
which we boycotted because they were in Russia.
Oh yeah. Damn it.
So, like, this lady, I think she was 15 for the 1980 Olympics. So, mid 50s whenever she was coaching me. I think she still had a bit of a chip on her shoulder about not getting to go to the Olympics. But, anyways, like, she literally broke my swimming down to the point where she was like, all right, don't swim, and was holding me in the water by my belly, like, floating me in the water with one hand on my belly and placing my arms.
Doing the kid shit. Yeah, teaching you.
Like,
Yeah.
she was placing my arms where she wanted them to be, like moving my hand how she wanted me to cup the water and all this stuff. And we spent, I don't know, every single day almost for like 5 months in the pool. And probably the first 2 months, I'd go in the pool for like an hour and a half with her, and I'd maybe swim 300 yards total, just working on just working on how to move the water efficiently. So, anyways, I show up to my first half iron event in 2013, and I think in 2012 I was doing like almost a 40-minute half iron swim. So that's 1.2 miles. So I showed up to my first event in 2013, and I think my time was like 26 minutes. And I got out of the water like not even breathing hard. It was
Oh,
insane.
good. Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So, but yeah, I ended up getting my professional license in 2013. Spent 5 years not being a very fast professional, but at least doing it.
Yeah, no, I mean the fact that you got to do it is just act of itself, that's fucking badass. Were you your wife, you said you met your wife there and then you guys are together during this time? Like how'd that work?
So we had actually dated in 2011 for a little bit, I think. And then we, went our separate ways and got back together in 2013. So I had just got my professional license that summer. We got back together and ended up getting married. So she went to a ton of the events, and they had this little group called the Tri Widows of basically all the wives that were like, seriously, our husbands are going to go run around in spandex together for the next 4 hours. Let's go get some Bloody Marys.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But, it was cool. We got to, we traveled all over the U.S., getting to, go to gorgeous locations, do these cool events. I didn't really make any money racing because it's such a competitive sport. Like any professional sport that you get into, especially individual sports, like you look at PGA pros for golfing, like there's all this money at the top, and then everyone else technically is a pro.
I'm a huge fan of golf, but you can see like the top 20 maybe are actually making enough money to support their habit, and then the rest it's a drop off. But I mean, just to have that in your background is so amazing, and you're doing that while you like you said, National Guard, you're working for all them and doing all the training, doing all the stuff. You get to a point basically. When did you get done with that stuff? Like doing the triathletes and stuff. What made you stop doing it?
one by the end of 2018, I was really tired. um, so you know, I was really tired trying to get 7-hour workouts in every Saturday. All just I was tired, man. It
No,
was a
I
lot of
get it, dude. You don't gotta explain to me.
it
Fucking,
was yeah, it was a lot of racing for
I'm
never
tired
see.
hearing it. Like that's
Yeah,
exhausting.
there's a lot of racing and a lot of travel for never really making it to the professional podium. So it's like, all right, I'm just gonna chill for 2019, try to regroup, try to like find some enjoyment in it again. That was, I still enjoyed it, but there were a lot of races by mid 2018 that if anything was going wrong in the race, I'm just like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
So I'd be like middle of the bike, you know, if I just know that I'm not feeling it, I'd be like, I'm just gonna pull over at the next aid station and call it. Uh, there was one race in 2018. I think it was the half Ironman up in Lake Stevens, Washington. Uh, Swam just fine, biked okay, but it was like 90 degrees that day on the run. I was dying, and I ran by my wife, and my in-laws were all out there watching me. I was like, you know what? I really just want to go hang out with my wife right now, and I just walked off the course.
Hell yeah.
So,
Hell yeah. Priorities. It's fine.
um, it's like I need to. If I'm gonna do this again, I need to enjoy it and not have it
Right.
be a chore. So 2019, I had planned on taking off and planned on kind of getting back into it in 2020, and then there was no events in 2020.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's when everything. I want to get into that. Give me 2 minutes. I want to take a quick break, and
Yep.
then we'll jump right back into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Four then, right?
Yeah,
Or
we started Frontier Coffee in 2017. Uh, so man, where to go with this?
yeah, I want to know. Like it.
I'm honestly like, so this is probably the most I've talked about any of this stuff in one sit down, and it probably sounds like a little bit ridiculous to buy all of it.
No, I've like we talked about. I've heard crazier. Believe me, I've heard. I listened to the Tim Kennedy episode of Antihero. I've heard crazier.
There's certainly crazier out there, but I don't know. Like it's just a lot. It's just a lot of stuff having been done in like one decade. Uh,
That's
all right,
group
so
guys though. A lot of group guys that I've met, they have a lot going on, which is, um, not to like ride your guys' ass, but um, typically a lot of group guys are high performers, and they usually are pushing for a lot of stuff. So I mean, it's not crazy.
no, I think a lot of guys do, and I think a lot of us. I think there's high performers, and I think there's like a lot of ADD or ADHD, whatever. So guys start a lot of projects and just keep throwing shit at the wall until something sticks. Honestly, I think
That's
they
funny.
do.
Yeah.
I have buddies where I haven't talked to them in a couple of years. I'm like, oh yeah, how's that thing going that you started? Like, oh man, that lasted 6 months. I'm 10 businesses past it. But so even before my wife and I got married, we had always talked about wanting to open a coffee shop. Kind of thinking like not your hippy dippy beat poetry coffee shop, but just a fucking coffee shop where you can get coffee. Thinking like, this seems like a laid back way to make a living. She's been working in and out of coffee shops and roasteries since she was like 18.
Oh
Like,
damn.
just seems like a pretty easy way to make a living. So again, we talked about this before we even got married. It kind of always popped up in conversation, like, one day, one day. Well, in 2016, I'm racing triathlon, I'm coaching athletes, and I'm working full time at 19th Group headquarters as the current operations NCO.
Okay.
It's like, it was awesome. I mean, sometimes the job was high stress because, we had guys in 26 countries at a time or something. And
Yeah.
like
Well,
all of it.
that ops NCO, not to cut you off, the ops NCO, I'm in S3 right now, and I can tell you, while it's a thankless job and it sucks ass, it is a very important thing. And like even at that level, especially, you're tracking a lot of shit going on for part-time guys or dudes that are activated way far away from you. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of shit.
Yeah, it was a busy desk. I was working at the headquarters in Utah, living in Park City, which was phenomenal for training. Um, my wife was making a ton of money doing real estate in Park City, and I get this phone call from this dude that I used to be on the same ODA as, and it's Evan Hafer. So
Oh man.
so Evan Hafer calls me up and he's like, "Hey man, I started this company and it's kind of taken off." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, cool man." Like we had gone on a trip to the Philippines together. We were buddies. Like, cool man. Where is it? What is it?
Was he as obsessed with coffee back then, or was it like
Not that, not that I remember. No.
yeah
Um. Yeah, he calls me in 2016. He's like, tells me about this thing. I'm like, I guess I'll come check it out. That's super cool. So I go down. I mean, it's only 20 minutes away from where I was working. So I meet Evan Hafer at Black Rifle. I'm like, wow, dude, this is super cool. Thanks for showing me. Maybe a week or so goes by. He calls me again. He's like, hey, man, I need somebody to run operations. Are you interested? So I went down and talked to him again. He's like, heard all the stuff that was going on. It's like, all right, man, I'm gonna leave my active duty job and come run ops at Black Rifle. So I ended up at Black Rifle for about 7 or 8 months, I think, 2016 into 17. It was during their first massive explosive
yeah
growth.
that's when they kind of blew up.
Yeah, and yeah, I was there for about 7 or 8 months, and then it was time for me to tap out. Well, we'll leave it
talk on that or
I think, I mean, obviously Evan built something amazing. It's enormous. I think a lot of money came in very quickly for a lot of guys who were not, me included, a lot of guys who were not ready to deal with that much money.
yeah
But what I saw and what I started out doing there, by the time I left there, I was like, it's not a place I want to be. I was spending however long, 14, 15, 16 hours a day there sometimes, and getting completely burned out, and like just I had a lot of, we all hired a lot of our friends there, and I was in this director of operations position. I was just like treating people that I cared about like complete dog shit, like taking my stress and anger out on them. And I'd gone home one day and was telling my wife like some of the stuff that I had said to some of these employees, and she was like, hold on, you said what to who? And I was like, holy shit, I'm done.
yeah. I mean, that's a big sign when your wife is telling you like you're not acting like the person I know.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was did that for a while, and a while later in 2017, my wife and I were like, all right, we're gonna take this money that we have for a down payment on our house, and we're gonna move to Washington, buy this dilapidated coffee stand, and rebuild it and reopen it. So we left Utah, left the BRCC crowd, and went and opened a little 10 by 12 drive-through coffee stand.
Hell yeah. Where was that at? Where was the little drive-through at?
That was in a little town called Paulsbo, Washington. It's on the Kitsap Peninsula, straight across the water from Seattle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you before we jump into that part, because I want to hear about that. Was there any hard feelings leaving, or you guys it was amicable, or?
I don't think it was great feelings.
Oh, okay.
In my mind, I had been trying to talk to him about what I thought were issues for several weeks, if not a month and a half. He had a million things going on. So, but in my mind, like if the director of operations for your exploding company is really trying to talk to you and you can't make it happen, like eventually I just tapped out. I was like, fucking done, dude. So I sent him a 2-week notice, letter of resignation, and unbeknownst to me, when I hit send that morning, he was in the hospital with his wife having a baby.
Ah, shit sandwich.
So, uh, yeah. So I sent the 2 week letter of resignation. I mean, very respectful letter. Like, I tried to talk to him for a long time about these issues. And they had this dude working there at the time. His name was Conan. He was like 6'6", probably weighed 300 pounds, and he looked like a bear. And he was the company's general counsel. So Conan shows up at my office. He's like, "You need to get your stuff and leave now." It's like, "Why?" It's like, "Because we." And like, so I got escorted out of the building. I'm like, "I gave a 2 week notice, not threatened to burn your company down." So like that definitely set a bad tone.
Sure.
But
But I want to hear. Let's do a lighter note. You
yeah,
got your little drive-through over
yeah.
in.
I mean,
Was it what's it called? Poulsboro, right? Or
Paulsbo.
yeah. You start that up. How did that go? You're starting your first business, basically.
Man, it sucked. Um, we had left actual jobs. Thought we were going to start this dream of a coffee shop that is a great way to make a living. We didn't make a cent.
Ah, shit.
So I ended up taking I ended up teaching ROTC for a semester and a half, to make some extra money. My wife took a job as a waitress in Paulsbo so that we could afford to pay our baristas.
Oh man.
um, and I mean, eventually business picked up, but it wasn't gangbusters. Like, if we had a great day, it was $300 would come through that day.
Well, and I think people think of, right now, obviously you're doing pretty good. I think people hear of, people that are successful and they go, oh, they fell into it. No, it's sometimes businesses, especially your first time, it's not the most successful route because you don't really know what you're doing. There's a billion things you could have done differently. I imagine that was your case, right?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I got a good buddy of mine that always uses the term, it's going to be an overnight success, 10 years in the making. And that's really how it goes. Like, you'll grind and grind and grind and put everything into it, and then it's never an overnight success.
Yeah.
I mean, every now and then you have that lightning strike, but for 99% of businesses, they grind and grind and grind, eventually maybe get ahead of the profit curve, maybe get enough people recognizing them that they share it with friends and family, and then it seems like an overnight success, but very rarely is it. For the first 4.5 years, we were both working other jobs. She would either, and my wife has a master's degree, but we also have kids, so she would like go get waitressing jobs so that we could afford to pay the baristas. I would take contracting gigs so that we could afford to buy beans or buy roasting equipment. So yeah, for 4.5 years, we just ground away at other jobs that actually paid the bills, and somehow managed to keep Frontier Coffee alive. Like, you know, the first stand that didn't make any money, we actually ended up flipping the stand because we rebuilt it, we put new equipment into it, we, fixed the landscaping, made this thing gorgeous. Um, and we ended up flipping it. And then we still kept our roasting equipment and our branding. So we kind of focused on that a little bit. Um,
Good
but
on
we
you
were,
guys. Sorry, real quick. Good on you guys for pushing through that. Like you were doing what it took to fucking make it work, and maybe you didn't in that moment, but you did over time. So that's
oh,
fucking
I mean,
that's yeah.
over a long time, man.
No, but it's a testament to your work ethic, and your wife's of you putting in that work to keep it rolling.
Honestly, I think for us, or for me in particular, like, I don't want to fail. I really don't want to fail. Not whether it's coffee, whether it's athletics, whether it's military, being a dad. Like, I just don't want to fail, and I think a lot of that comes kind of from, not to go too deep into like the psych route, but like, I think that a lot of that comes from my dad leaving at some point in my adolescent years, and just, a lot of stuff where I'm like, man, fuck you guys. I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have that in them. The more I've met, of like if you tell me no, like I'm gonna try as
Yeah.
hard as I fucking can to make this work. So
So,
I get that.
um, yeah. So it's kind of like the evolution of this company. Again, just more wild stories. Like we ended up out in northern Idaho for 6 months for a potential partnership that didn't work out.
Oh fuck.
So like we left sold the stand in Washington, end up in northern Idaho. It doesn't work out. I mean, we don't have two pennies to rub together at that point. We're
Yeah.
so freaking poor. And I had a friend of mine who was a general down in California. And he offered me a full-time job working at Fort Hunter Liggett, California. So I'm like, all right, pack the truck again. We're dragging this thing to California.
Yeah.
So I ended up working full-time as the division safety officer in Fort Hunter Liggett, California. Uh, so I had left the National Guard to take this full-time division safety officer job in the reserves. So we get down there, I get the job. It's not the most exciting job, but like it's actually a great broadening assignment. But so 2019, yeah, we get there in 2018, summer of 2019. The company is kind of barely squeaking along, but then we start getting contracts to go do the coffee at events. So like Malibu, the Malibu Nautica Triathlon, the Santa Barbara Triathlon, uh, the Mid-State, California Mid-State Fair, like all of these giant events.
Yeah.
So like Frontier starts taking off again. Like, all right, this is cool. Like we can show up. We are the only coffee vendor at this event with 15,000 people. Like it is a cash cow. So I start lining up all the contracts for 2020. Like we had the contract with Ironman Triathlon for basically every event from San Diego up to the Canadian border.
Holy shit.
Had the contract for every single event that we did in 2019, and like we are going to crush it in 2020. So me being the genius that I am, I'm like, all right, Jen, it's time. Like we are going to do Frontier Coffee full time. So I think it's November of 19, and I leave active duty again because I'm gonna live the entrepreneurial dream. So leave senior E7 pay, leave my BAH, my TRICARE, all the stuff, and then of course March of 2020 rolls around, and we're just like, oh shit.
Fuck.
It's like how I left active duty to go to Black Rifle, which was like a $40,000 pay cut.
Yeah.
Left active duty to focus on Frontier, which turned into zero money. And yeah, March of 2020, it was just like, man, we are puckered up tight. And we had a website, but we didn't push it. Like maybe 24 orders trickled through there every month.
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of people didn't go to straight to websites pre 2020, basically. Like people weren't really going direct to the source to buy shit. It was either Amazon or you went to the store.
Yeah. Especially not for something like coffee.
Right. Yeah.
But the online coffee market is pretty stinking saturated.
Well, now, I mean, holy shit, I looked up yours, but then I look up, I mean, not to dive too deep into baseball, but you look up Frontier, you can look up Black Rifle, you can do First Responder Coffee Company over with Brent. You can do I on my fucking Instagram now, because I've reached out to like you and 2 other coffee places. All I see are fucking coffee companies now. And you're like, damn, guys, like, I get it. There's a lot of flavors, but like holy shit. And I think what's hard is to in business, right? You separate yourself, and that's what you're doing, obviously, with your stuff, like with the Boldly Patriotic, and
Right.
you kind of attach all that to it, and you're making yourself out there. But god damn, is it saturated, to your point?
Oh, I do not recommend it to anyone. Like not to keep you out of my market. I mean, stay out of my market, but I don't recommend it to anyone. I mean, so you're talking about companies that you've found right now. Think about how many have opened and gone under in the last few years.
Yeah, holy shit. Especially they wanted to start it because they had COVID time, so they were
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I'm gonna start a coffee business," and
yeah.
it.
I don't recommend it. And honestly, like online was never it was never the goal of what we were doing.
Right.
We had always talked about opening a coffee shop.
You
um,
just wanted like a brick and mortar place, right? Like that was your
yeah, yeah.
goal.
We just wanted a brick and mortar place. We're like, all right, this is chill. We make enough money. We pay the rent, pay the mortgage, whatever, and we go to work at a coffee shop together because it seems chill. Yeah, where we are right now was never the starting goal to be, one of the online companies. Um, but yeah, so March 2020 kicked everyone in the nuts. Uh, my wife was working, as the she was working as like the marketing director at a golf course in Paso Robles, California at the time. Not making any money. Like it was just a fun job because I was on active duty. But the golf course closed also. So
Damn it.
I know. So we couldn't I couldn't get a job at Home Depot, couldn't get a job at the grocery store, couldn't get a job at the gas station. Like man, we are screwed. And then another blessing from the National Guard came along.
Oh shit.
So Utah National Guard calls me up and they're like, "Hey, the the senior medic who was supposed to come work at the Salt Lake MEP station can't leave Germany because of COVID." I'm like, okay, thanks for telling me. I'm in California. So they're like, well, we want you to come be the senior medic at MEPS for that till the rest of till the end of the fiscal year while we figure this out. So we were so freaking desperate, and then that phone call came through. I was like, yes, absolutely yes, I will
Yeah.
do it.
How
So
did that? Sorry. How did that work? With you'd been out of the 18 Delta slot for a while, and I know medics are pretty strict on their table eights and stuff. How'd that work for you?
um, it was totally fine. Uh, I had only been in the reserves for like a year and a half or so, and I think I had done a refresher right before.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and I did end up getting another refresher at some point while I was out there. I forget when that one was, but
Yeah.
it was fine. But it was an absolute blessing, and so I went out to Salt Lake, Utah. My wife and my son were out in California, and we're still very much in limbo. Cause like, all right, I've got 6 months of ADOS orders. This is a stopgap.
Yeah, you're not really like set in stone for being
No,
up there.
no. But to keep, we had at the time not a ton of online sales going, but enough. We own the roasting equipment. We have this much time invested in the Frontier. Like we had a couple of wholesale accounts. We're like, all right, what are we gonna do now? So I packed up our enclosed trailer, the one that we were using for events, dragged all of the green beans, all of the packaging, like all of our shipping boxes, all of everything except for the roasting equipment itself, came out to Utah with me while I was working ADOS. And my friends who own Park City coffee roasters were like, hey man, we got you. You can roast your coffee up here after hours and ship everything out of our facility. So I would work at MEPS all day, drive back up to Park City, go to Park City Coffee Roasters, use their equipment and use their facility, and that kept Frontier alive while we were just kind of living in limbo.
Wow.
Um,
Where were you getting your beans from?
uh, at the time, we've always been mostly Central and South America. We, Mexico, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Colombia, Brazil, kind of all the big ones.
How does that work when you're I never really messed with coffee much, obviously. Wholesale. Are you just ordering that from like some company down there and they send it to you, or?
No, so almost all the roasters in the U.S. will use a green bean broker. So coffee gets imported to the U.S. from all over the world. Typically comes into Houston, New York, New Jersey, Seattle, or Bay Area, California.
Okay.
And there's brokers, different brokerage companies that will, you'll let them know what you're looking for. They'll find it in the warehouses and, basically pull it and charge you for it. Um, yeah. So we've always used broker, and actually now we're finally starting to import our own stuff. Um, so we're trying to price stabilize some stuff by doing our own imports, but it's a learning experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but back to your point, you're working MEPS full time, which
Yeah.
for those that don't know what MEPS is, it's where all the recruits come through, which is a full time job because it always recruits coming through, and
Yeah.
then you're going and roasting at night.
Yeah, roasting and packaging at night, shipping out, whatever orders we can convince people to buy on frontier.com or frontiercoffee.com. And yeah, that was the first, whatever, 8 months of COVID or so. And again, we were living in limbo. I'm in Utah. They're just kind of sitting in California.
Yeah.
And eventually we were like, all right, what are we going to do? And we, all right, we need to go someplace that's open so that we can try to stay in business, try to actually live instead of just living in California bubbles. Um, so it was like, all right, we're not going back to North Idaho. We looked at Texas. We looked at Tennessee. Um, Ultimately, we ended up putting a finger down on a map in Tennessee, and all right, that's where we're going. It's open. We can. It wasn't much, but we had enough going with Frontier that we're like, it's literally the only potential income that we have, so we need to try to keep it alive. And in order to do that, we couldn't afford a commercial property at the time. We could barely afford a house. The only reason that we were able to get our approval for the house is because I was on ADOS orders.
So you could use
looked,
that active
so
duty.
it looked like we had money. And like Texas had some great stuff, but in order for us to run the commercial roastery on our own property, we had to have a house with a detached warehouse.
Okay.
Which we could not get one in a rural enough area in Texas for the little bit of money that we were approved for.
Yeah.
So we ended up in rural Tennessee with on this little farmhouse with a detached warehouse that we were able to get FDA certified to roast and produce out of.
That's fucking cool though. That had to be kind of a fun experience to jump into that.
It was It was
no
pure
nightmare.
panic.
Okay, yeah, nightmare.
It was pure panic, man.
Nightmare.
Like September 30th is rolling around. I know that this active duty paycheck is done. And like, we're not selling very much coffee at the time. I actually looked back at the numbers recently. I think we got to Tennessee in October of 2020. And I think in September of 2020, we had maybe $4,000 worth of sales on the website.
Yeah. Which I guess is not a lot. I don't know money, but that doesn't sound great.
That's not really enough to pay for your car, pay for your mortgage, pay for the cost of goods to run a company. Like $4,000 is not enough to run a company on. But that was all that we had, so we kept scraping.
And then you get there, what were your initial impressions of Tennessee? Because you said you're from up in the northeast, and then your wife is from. I didn't hear where your wife was from. I don't know if you said it, but I don't think she's from Tennessee.
No, she grew up in California and Washington.
Oh yeah, so way different lifestyle, and you're bringing a kid on the way to grow up there. How was that?
I mean, the honest answer is it started off great, and then the more we actually kept the business alive, the more we kind of were trying to grow and do more local stuff. Like the rose-colored glasses actually wore off pretty quickly. There's definitely some cultural differences that make running running an aggressive small business. They make it difficult. One of them being I think that there's an odd sentimental value in some of these rural southern areas. So we live in East Tennessee. A lot of these towns out here, they're super dilapidated. I mean, they're the buildings are rotting to the ground in the historic downtown.
I'm I'm from Missouri originally,
Okay.
and I just spent my last 3 years there in near Fort Leonard Wood, and I can tell you, I love Missouri. I love it
Yeah.
with my whole heart, but goddamn, the buildings are just so run down, especially in historic areas or main
Yeah.
streets. Like it's kind of fucked, and nobody does anything about it.
No. So I think, and what my experience is that, the same families have owned them forever. Like, well, my uncle's friend stubbed his toe here once, and it just means a lot to me. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to rent it so that we can actually, like, maybe, I don't know, have some economic vitality downtown?
No, no,
Maybe.
no, 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 no. We're gonna
No.
keep it looking like dog shit.
Yeah. So, and like, that's literally what it is. So, like, well, we're afraid that you're going to change this area because you ain't from here. Like, you should want somebody to change this area because have you looked around?
And
Like,
and you're a coffee company. You're
I know.
not doing anything crazy.
Nope. And I am one of the loudest. I am actually hands down the loudest conservative in my town.
Oh, I've heard. We'll get to that in a little bit, but
So they're like,
I do know you are the loudest conservative.
so I'm like, what do you think I'm going to do that's going to, like, I just don't know.
Infringe upon everybody. Like what do you think is going to make me like ruin this town? I don't.
I know. Like, all of you guys are like, yeah, we're deep red, we're conservative, we're this, we're that. I'm like, cool, man. I'm a special forces veteran, entrepreneur, super conservative, outspoken. I'm gonna fly the American flag in front of my store. Like, well, we just don't know about that.
Nancy
All right.
Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is moving in our town. That's what they think.
They're like, well, you moved here from California. Like, I was stationed there, asshole.
Yeah.
So, like, that's been honestly one of the most difficult things, and I've actually given up on trying to do like I've given up on really trying to play nice and, like, listen, if I'm not even going to approach some of these people renting their buildings, buying their buildings, or doing anything. You guys have let your town. I wasn't here while you let your town crumble to the ground.
Yep.
Like, this is not my problem. This is not my fault. If you guys want to keep it that way, that's totally fine. If you want to elect the same feckless, spineless, do nothing, milquetoast politicians over and over, whatever. That's your prerogative. As you all like to tell me, I ain't from here.
Well, so you get there in 21 or 21 you said?
October 20.
Yeah, October 20. When did you start getting into, well, I'll build on that. So you get there in that, you start doing your coffee out of there. Was it, you said it was kind of a pain in the ass. Where did you start getting involved in politics at that point?
I mean, probably week 1.
Yeah. Just jumping in.
Like, getting our like Tennessee State agriculture license, getting our FDA certification, getting business licensing, all of that was super easy. Especially having, like, we had started in Washington, we'd done it in California. What a pain in the ass those places were.
Sure.
Tennessee was just like, cool, man, here's your license, have a good day. But I mean, so week 1, didn't have internet at my house yet. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna take my computer to the public library so I can use the Wi-Fi and do whatever I gotta do. So it's still 2020. But again, I left California to come to the free state of Tennessee. I go to open the library door and it's locked. I'm like, huh, this is weird. So I look in, there's like 5 librarians standing there behind the counter. I kind of jiggle on the door. One of them comes up, she's like, oh, the library's closed because of COVID. I was like, what are you doing here? Like, well, I work here. I said, well, what are you guys doing here if citizens can't come in to use the library? And, like, she looked at me like genuinely confused. I would ask why all the employees are there, but I'm not allowed to use the public building. So she's like, well, I mean, technically we're allowing people to use the public computer for up to 1 hour at a time. So I look at her, I'm like, so hold on. You're telling me, first you're telling me that you're closed. Now you're telling me that I can sit down and use the public computer that the homeless bums come in and use, but I can't sit down at my own desk using the Wi-Fi on my own computer. And I swear to God, like it looked like somebody had thrown a wrench in her mental gears. Like she could not process this information.
Is this a bigger
So
town or is this like a moderate?
that's
Like,
it's Morristown, Tennessee. I mean, there's like 45, 50,000 people there, I think.
oh, that's
But
kind of a. I mean, that's kind of a bigger,
it's
probably
it's
more
a
liberal facing town.
it's kind of a big town, but it's really really spread out. So like the
Okay.
downtown is not a huge downtown. It's spread out over a pretty large area. Um, so like that was literally week one. I'm like, huh, this doesn't add up. I left California. Literally more shit was open in California than the town that I moved to in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So then I start like, oh, they've tried to close all of the county buildings. So I sent the that first week I sent the county letting him know that he's currently being a worse communist than Gavin Newsom was, and just just lambasting this prick. And he was an absolute prick. Um, but that was like my first foray into like, all right, this place is not as conservative as they think that they are. Like they're still the type of conservative that I've met throughout most of these areas, unfortunately, is like the weakest type of conservative. It's your boomer era. Well, I heard this on Fox News, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but do you use any critical thought process, or you just like, all right, that's fine that you want to watch Fox News. That's fine that you want to watch MSNBC, but do you use any critical thought process?
Well, unfortunately, they grew up in that era of believing
Yeah,
news when it was only, Walter Cronkite at night. And then you jump to basically, in their minds, it's Walter Cronkite 24/7. So
right.
they just trust it. And you're like, that's not the fucking case anymore
No,
whatsoever.
no, it's not. There's no news. It's only opinions.
100%. Even
Um,
even like you like now, even me and you, right? We like I listen to Fox News. I try to listen to CNN and MSNBC to hear all sides. But then you also got to like now you got to really do homework to understand all of it. You got to start looking at weird news articles. You got to listen to some weird far right people or far left and you're like, "Okay, I kind of get a picture of this."
yeah,
But there's really no solid evidence-based news anymore.
no, and there's no solid evidence base, and it's just so hard to trust any. It's so hard to trust any resource. Um, it's in my mind, anyways. I'm like, I think this sounds right, but I don't know. Yeah, my our introduction to Tennessee politics and like what they think is conservatism and liberty is just not conservatism and liberty. It's just fear. Uh, so yeah, there's
Is
the
that sorry? Is that what made you jump into politics? Was it like you saw these issues and you're like, well, this needs to fucking stop because I'm gonna live
pretty
here?
pretty much. Yeah. So the next one that really was my catalyst was the school board. They were masking kids. So the way it worked in Tennessee, Governor Lee, he passed an executive order essentially telling county mayors that it was up to them whether they wanted to do mask mandates. Um, so, my county mayor, being the spineless turd that he is, he imposed a mask mandate for like 2 months or something. Well, then, the end date of his mask mandate ended like, I don't know, January 31st of 21 or something.
Yeah.
But the school board continued to try to do this masking of the kids. I'm like, no, Governor Lee's executive order ended whatever date. The mayor's executive order ended this date. Like that state executive order does not pass along to the school board and certainly does not extend further than the executive order itself extends.
Absolutely.
Even if they wanted to look at the executive order and be like, okay, the mayor can use this executive order, the superintendent can use it, the sheriff can use it, even if they wanted to interpret it that way, it certainly does not go past the end date of the executive order. So like I came unfucking glued over them masking my kid. And we pulled him out of school and we were done with that. But it was like, man, I looked at the school board at the time. The most junior person on the school board had been on it for like 27 years.
God damn.
Like
The
what?
most junior?
Yeah. was like, what
That is how these
business?
small towns are. They
Yeah.
have their kid went to school, like you said, 20, 30 years ago, but then they have nothing. I don't know if it's they
Yeah.
don't have nothing better to do, or they find a purpose in it, but then they stick to whatever their principles are, and they mow anything down that is happening.
I know. It's they run it, they run it like a potluck social club.
Yeah. So you jump into politics on that. You're running as a Republican, I believe, is what I saw. Um,
Yeah.
what how did excuse me, how did that transpire for you?
So I, in order to run for a state representative seat, you have to live in the county for a certain amount of time, or live in your district for a certain amount of time, file all the stuff, and you have to get a petition signed by your constituents. So basically, the petition says, "Hey, I'm Nate Dressel. I want to run as a conservative candidate for, this position in this district. Blah blah blah. Do you support me running as a candidate? Not do you support me as a candidate. It's basically, do you support my right as a citizen to run for this seat?" Um, I mean, typically, if somebody's signing your petition, they do support you, but that the petition is saying, yes, I agree that you have the right to run for this seat. So I get my petition signed, I get it turned into the state election commission, um, do all of that stuff by the book, and right on like the very last day, there's deadlines for when certain stuff has to be turned in and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I get it all turned in, and then the Tennessee State Republican Party basically sends a letter saying that we're not allowing you to run as a Republican candidate in this election because you haven't voted in 3 out of the last 4 state primary elections as a Republican. Like, well, each state party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, has bylaws for that state. So in the Republican Party bylaws, it says you must have voted in 3 out of the last 4 state level primary elections. So that's the wording of their bylaws. It does not say, it says state level primaries. Well, registered Republican in California, registered Republican in Idaho, registered Republican in Washington. Like, okay, here's you can interpret this however, but what, like, if we're doing it this way, what active duty person or somebody just leaving active duty, or freshly minted veteran, or somebody who got stationed here, like, there's no provision.
There's no way you could have done that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually got this. My wife got the certified letter saying that I was getting kicked off of the primary ballot while I was ironically out here in Tullahoma training a bunch of guys. So I'm out here for like 4 days. This letter comes in on a Friday afternoon. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. So I spent like the rest of that day Friday calling every single place that I had lived or been stationed for like the last 12 years, getting every single one of my voting records, primary, general, everything. And amazingly, I got all this stuff together. So like I wrote this, wrote a appeal to them removing me from the
yeah. Proving that you did vote and that it was bullshit, essentially.
So I get this appeal all together, get the appeal in before the appeal deadline, which I don't think that they even expected. And I mean, like that fast, they're like, yeah, the appeal's denied.
Did they give reasoning or anything, or?
Nope, they just said denied.
So
I sent at least 15 letters to to Scott Golden, who is the Tennessee Republican Party chairperson. At least 15 letters to him asking for like proof of who voted against my appeal, like, any response, any reasoning. Absolutely nothing from them. They just said no, it's denied, and shut the book. So I So the incumbent ran unopposed in the primary election, and it, like, in hindsight, after the primary election passed, it made sense to me why they were so terrified of me being on the primary. So you think about the 2024 election cycle, especially at state level. Well, the presidential primary was in March
Yeah.
of 2024. The state primary for like county positions, for state positions, was in August of 2020. Yeah, August of 2024. So everyone shows up for the presidential primary. That's a big deal.
Yeah, nobody shows up though at the August
Nobody,
ones.
nobody shows up for the August state level primary. So looking at that in hindsight, it was like, all right, it's a presidential year, not a midterm election. So everyone showed up. Nobody's going to show up to this. Like, literally, to get the to win, if you win the primary seat as a conservative here, you're going to win the general election.
Yeah.
In order to win the primary seat, it only would have taken like what 51% of the vote. So I don't know, 1,200 votes, because that's how few people showed up to it.
What the fuck?
So I was like, all right, fuck you guys, and I made a big stink at it. Like,
I saw a lot of I tried Googling you a little bit, and what popped up was just articles about you getting denied your running, basically. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't negative, it was all like, why did this guy get denied? And it turned into this whole thing.
yeah, it was. I mean, the Tennessee Republican Party. I mean, all of these parties are pretty corrupt. But the Tennessee Republican Party has a pretty long history of booting people who ain't from here,
Yeah.
which means that they get the same turds that they always get. So I waited for the primary to pass, and then I filed my paperwork to run as a write-in candidate on the general. And here's one of the messed up parts about the way that the Republican Party did this. And I know that they're smart enough to know what they were doing. They sent my denial and kicked me off of the primary without me having enough time to refile to run as an independent. So, like, I couldn't even get my name on the ballot. I could only be an official write-in candidate.
I'll jump in here. I listened to your podcast on this with, I think it was about defending the guard.
Yeah, with Josiah Baker.
Yeah, they explained how with an actual party candidate, you only need like 100 or 200 signatures.
Right.
But if you're a write-in, you need like 25,000 or some shit.
Oh, so that's for national levels.
Oh, okay. Either way, like, yeah. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, they specifically make it next to impossible.
Yeah.
Like, the parties go out of their way to deny the will of the people, or to not even give the people a choice. But yeah, so I filed to be a official. You can't just be a write-in candidate. You actually have to file paperwork for those write-in votes to count. So I did that whole process, and funny enough, so like, primary passes. Obviously, all the conservative incumbents win their primaries. All of the campaign signs are taken down. Like, they don't even bother putting a campaign sign up for the general election. Because I filed that write-in, and because I was such a loud motherfucker, the only sign that was, like, I mean, they're all over the county still. The only signs that were still up was the incumbent that I was running against. I was like, this is such a psychological victory that this dude is still scared for his seat.
Yeah.
And then, so, I hardly got any campaign money. Like, nobody was donating to our campaign, rightfully so. I mean, such a long shot to unseat an incumbent.
Well, yeah, you weren't with the party technically, and you weren't
right.
Yeah.
And because it was past the primary, like, whatever. But we had, I don't know, $1,500 or so left in the campaign account. So, like, the 2 weeks before the general election, again, keep in mind how old the Republican Party members are here.
Yeah.
So, like, the 2 weeks before the election, I'm just like, all right, motherfuckers, I'm going to unleash social media ad spend. Like, every single cent that I have is just getting, there's not unexpended campaign funds. If you're not going to run again, unexpended campaign funds are supposed to be donated to the party. Well, granted, the party kicked me out of it, so they weren't going to get a cent anyways. Yeah. I was like, man, I'm going to spend every single cent just like geofencing ads right on each one of your houses. And it was pretty fucking funny. They
That's
were just,
awesome.
I mean, so the Vote Nate Dressel website was getting like 7,000 clicks a week or something. It was pretty funny.
Hell yeah.
So I still lost, but we actually I think we ended up getting like I don't know 400 or 500 write-in votes on the county ballot.
I was telling somebody about this. Oh, a guy that just started a podcast. They were talking about their YouTube clicks. They were worried because they're not getting a lot because it's like their first 4 episodes,
Yeah,
and they had 200 views on their first each video had 300 views.
I think that
And
beats most of ours.
I that's what I said. I go, first of all, you're beating me. Secondly, you got to think of an auditorium. Imagine for you 500 people standing up and saying I stand with you. Like
Yeah,
that's pretty fucking phenomenal,
yeah,
especially not having the Republican Party support in rural Tennessee, and you just moved there in like the
yeah.
past year
No,
or two. So
there was, I think it was substantial numbers. I mean, it was like 3.8% of the vote or something for the general election turnout.
I think it's dog shit that you have to be with that party, with a party, to get the support. I think it's
Yeah,
insane. I think I think there's a major problem in America right now of, and it's a bet, especially like you talked about a boomer problem of like these old heads that stick with their party. Like I know
yeah.
people in my hometown from rural Missouri of farmers and ag people that they still voted for Biden. And you're like,
It's
what the fuck are you doing?
it's.
Why?
I mean, I even driving around, rural Tennessee, West Virginia, I saw the same thing. Like, 70-something-year-old farmers wearing
Yes.
Biden Harris hats. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yes. I don't get it, you know. And they got to see that news. They got to see it, but
One of the things that I thought was really ironic, I mean, so the local Republican Party, one of the reasons why they didn't like me is I'm loud, I'm brash, I say what I'm thinking, and I mean what I say. Like, hey, we need to change stuff. I'm going to change it. This is how I think we should do it. So they took offense to that and like, well, he's just not very cordial. He's this, and this. Like, yeah, but you guys all bow to Trump. Like, what?
right?
Like you guys pretend that I am such a thorn in the side, yet you're like, yay, Donald Trump is the best thing we've ever seen. I'm like, uh,
It's yeah, exactly. Like Nate, I appeal with you because it's like you hear it and you're like, okay, I get that you don't like Biden. That's cool. I get that the Democrat Party is a little fucked. That doesn't mean the Republican Party's perfect whatsoever,
right
and it definitely doesn't mean Trump is our best pick right now for president. Like
now,
that doesn't mean that.
yeah, the Republican Party is just as broken as the Democrat Party. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're both they're both garbage.
Yeah, it pisses me off really bad that even Trump, right, that he obviously had to run as a Republican to get the nomination. But like Trump's not really a Republican either. Like
No,
I don't really understand why you guys think that. It's whatever. I don't I digress. I could go on forever with you about that. Um you, you you're running all this with the campaign. How's your coffee business doing?
coffee's kicking ass, man. Uh, I mean, it's still a saturated market. It is really tough. It's not like we wake up every day and we're like, oh look, sales are just rolling in. I mean, we still have to work our ass off to drive traffic to the website, to get people to add to cart, get people to put a card in there, check out, do all this stuff.
You got a couple brick and mortar though now, right?
No, we don't have any.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I thought I looked it up and I thought I saw some. Maybe some people are
Uh,
bullshitting.
I mean, people are welcome to come into the roastery and purchase bags there. We'll make you a latte. We'll bullshit with you. We'll let you roast the coffee for all I care. Yeah, people are welcome to come into the roastery. We did have a shop in Gatlinburg, but we sold that. We're focused on roasting now. Uh, yeah, people are welcome to come in there. It's right in downtown Morristown. And website's going okay. We do the direct to customer stuff. We're really trying to expand our wholesale offerings. Roast coffee for coffee shops, do custom label stuff. So whatever brand wants to have their own private label coffee, we
Yeah.
can do custom labeling, we can do custom K-cup packaging, we can take care of third party logistics. So like if they don't want to even touch the coffee, they never have to touch it. We can pull their online orders, we can take care of all the packaging and shipping. So we're really kind of pushing. Yeah, the Frontier brand is continuing to grow. We love that. We love that people love what we have to say. We love that they're listening to us and supporting us. Um, but again, that direct customer market is so saturated that we do have to continue growing the other parts of the business, which is wholesaling for other people, roasting for other people, and offering those third party logistics services for them.
Yeah, it's I mean it's obviously like you said a business. You're trying to grow and expand and it's working. Are you so let's switch gears here a little bit. You jumped into the podcast game too with
Yeah,
Boldly Patriotic, which for those that haven't listened, it's solid as fuck. It's a great listen. I will say I think you have some pretty strong views, which is
yeah,
fine. Um I think people that aren't open to it are like whatever, but then it's not for them because it's podcast. So it's
yeah.
it's a spectrum, if you will. And tell me about it. How'd you jump into that game too?
Um, I mean, Frontier was always we've always been, my wife and I are conservatives. We're not ashamed of that. So it's always been like, American values, family values, this kind of like conservative based brand. Uh, but it was never our intent to be like fist shaking in the air, griping about politics and social issues until COVID came along, and we're just like, fuck these people, man. Um, and I don't even remember what the first post was, but we had been going for probably 3 years. I was just being like, look at this picture of a cup of coffee and a fence post, or like whatever we thought Instagram pictures should look like. And then I don't even know what the post was, but we put some post out there one day that was just like, this is fucking stupid, and it resonated with people.
Yeah.
Um, and then our country kept getting stupider and stupider, so we
Oh,
kept.
I saw. I'll bring it up. I saw there was an article, or it was like some random. It wasn't even a regular news source, but they pulled your guys' thing where you had an ad. I don't even know what the fuck it was about, and then somebody commented some bullshit on it. Then you made a joke. Then they made a joke. Like they made a joke about you. Then you made a joke at them, and blah blah blah. And then they spun it basically to where you were like a hard right, neoconservative, blah blah blah, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? But
Yeah, you're probably talking about the Young Turks. Was it some black dude with dreads and some
yeah,
white
yeah,
hippie
yeah,
looking dude?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the Young Turks. They're basically
Aren't they an
autistic.
extremist group? Aren't they an extremist group or no?
No, the Young Turks is basically it's a quasi news organization, but essentially they're just autistic communists with
Sure.
microphones. Um, and honestly, like I forget the dude's names. It's that black dude with dreads and his white newscasting partner that looks like a hippie dread dude or whatever he is. Um, like theirs was
Yeah,
not.
it transitioned. I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, Nate. It transitioned because I was watching it and I'm like intrigued, and then it went over to this other guy that's like super white. I don't know if he's like mixed or whatever, but he was very white and he had dreads. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
man,
what the fuck is it?
the cultural appropriation was thick.
Sure, sure.
Um, but like honestly, the Young Turks hit piece was not the worst thing that was out there. Uh, the Young Turks have several million people that watch their stuff, so like it definitely put eyes on us. But they were definitely not the meanest ones out there. Like there's a it's some Instagram page called like the Tennessee Holler, I think. And it's basically like
Yeah,
turbo left wing Tennessee triple left wing stance on anything Tennessee. So they were the ones who started like basically doxing us, like showing pictures of my kid where he went to school, and like that's when I was like,
What the fuck?
all right, it's like you guys can be pissed at me, but like, and I made the video where they're like crying conservative racist cries on
That's what it
camera.
was. Yeah, because they
And
said
I'm
you were
like,
crying, but it was like they were showing pictures of your kids. Like,
yeah.
what the
And
fuck?
so I made this video. I'm like, look, guys, it's the fucking internet. Let's at least play by some rules and leave our kids out of it. And they were like, look at this crying racist. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm crying on the internet about not wanting you to dox my child. Um, but I mean, honestly, like uh, that the thing that some of the people got upset about was not even close to the most controversial stuff that our company has said on the internet. So like when they got upset about, I honestly don't even remember what post it was. It was in like March or April of 2023. I was like, what? Like honestly scratching my head, like what the heck about this post set so many people off? Um, but I mean that was like it was the biggest expansion our company's ever had.
Yeah, because I mean, you probably pulled in a lot more people that were like-minded, or
Yeah,
were just like, "This is fucking retarded. I'm gonna go
yeah,
see what this is about." You know?
yeah. And so when this all started off, and they were really like doxing. They found my wife's personal cell phone number, they found our address, found out where my kid went to school, like all this insane shit. And I think it was also around the same time that tranny shot up a school in Nashville. So we're like,
Oh, I remember it vaguely. I don't
yeah,
remember it too well.
yeah. So we're like, man, these people are actually insane. So I called my friend John Burke up, who's like one of the most canceled men on the internet.
Oh,
So
you
I
were telling
called,
me. I didn't know you knew him that well. Yeah.
yeah. So I called John. I'm like, hey man, the leftists found me. I was like, what should I do? He's like, well, you got three options. You can apologize. I was like, well, that's not happening. He's like, well, that's good because if you apologize, you're not going to get them as customers, and you're going to lose whatever customers you do have. I was like, yeah, take that off the table. Not happening because I'm not sorry. He's like, your second option is you can just go radio silent. Stay quiet for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Don't do
yeah.
anything. Maybe it'll pass over. You'll probably gain nothing, lose nothing. Uh, or you can just own what the fuck you said and keep going. It's like that. It's like that, John. How do I do that? He was just like, say more of it. So like essentially that conversation with John is probably where Boldly Patriotic was born. Like not that, not that day. That's when we were like, all right, like it's out there. Everyone knows what we believe. Like we're not hiding it anymore. Um, and we got more and more boldly patriotic until we're like, all right, this is fine. Like this is what the brand is now. Everyone knows that we are America's most conservative based coffee company. There's zero competition about that, zero question about that.
Yeah.
But also we would like to sell coffee and not just shake our fists on the internet. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of where we started building this other silo of like, let's do something where we can. Frontier is not going to lose its edge. Like Frontier is what it is, but also we want to be able to do long form content, not just 30 to 90 second reels on Instagram. So like I did our first couple episodes just sitting at a desk in the middle of the warehouse with sound echoing, forklifts driving around and all this stuff. And it's kind of transitioned to where we built this makeshift studio, and we've got multiple cameras and microphones and switchboards and all the stuff in there. Uh, and maybe it looks professional on camera, but realistically, it's just like a couple of pieces of plywood tacked together.
I think
So
that's how it goes for all of us beginning out.
yeah,
Like I was telling you, like right now I'm in my living room, and then before here I had a detached garage in my 5-acre plot,
yeah,
and you kind of do what you can.
yeah,
It's not podcasting isn't all like this beautiful art that you just randomly get this amazing studio. Like you just make
No.
it how you can.
Yeah. To build our studio, I found 2 pallets of 2x4s. They were all the warped 2x4s.
Sure.
So, I mean,
As they should be. Yeah.
yeah. So I think I paid $200 for probably like 400 2x4s. I'm like, all right, this is what we're building the frame of the studio out of.
Hell yeah.
So, so we built the frame of the studio, kind of under some of our pallet racking, and then we looked at it and we're like, man, this is not square at all. So then we get a bunch of OSB boards. Like, all right, we need to put walls on this thing, and I got OSB because it was cheaper than drywall.
Yeah, cheaper, yeah.
So we put OSB up, and there's like 6 inch, 6 inch wide gap at the top, maybe a half inch down at the bottom.
It's all fucked.
Yeah, so we're like shoving coffee bags and sacks in there, like trying to fill the gaps. And the cameras are looking at this back corner. That's the most square corner of the studio.
Yeah, but people love that, man. Once you hear that story of that, that's so much more fun than like, yeah, we had a professional come in and design it. No, it's you guys put your heart and soul into that shit, and that's fun.
It's affectionately known at our warehouse as Zip Tie Kingdom. So I have a terrible. I cannot visualize space. Cannot do it at all. Like if I see a shelf sitting in the middle of a 10,000 square foot warehouse, in my mind, everything needs to be built around that shelf. You can't just move the shelf. I'm terrible at space. So I could not visualize like, all right, what does a 12-foot by 8-foot studio look like in this, underneath this pallet rack? So I went through and I zip tied 2x4s to the pallet racking so that I could visualize like, all right, here's the ends and the corners of where this thing's going to be. And my landlord walks in and looks at, zip tied 2x4s just like swinging around in the wind inside this building. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's like, are you building an office out of zip ties? I was like, no, I'm not building it out of zip ties. I just can't visualize the space. But like he just ragged like for a solid week every time he saw me. He's like, so how's the zip tie kingdom coming? Yeah. But
So that's good. So how does like you got your coffee, you got your podcast, and then how does that tie into like what you're doing now with like, you're still in the National Guard, you're still doing obviously training right now. How does that all work together? Is it going good or is it a lot?
it's a lot. Coffee and podcast kind of go hand in hand, and everything's in the same space. So when I go to my office, it is also the roastery. It is also our fulfillment center. It's also our studio. So that's we have a lot going on in there. I mean, we're trying to grow our wholesale program. Like we're proactively building. We're building sales funnels. We're building. Here's a wholesale packet that I can send employees out to to try to cold call these accounts. So that's busy. I am very part-time for the Guard. Like when I switched over to the Tennessee Guard and I left SF Guard, I was really embracing that 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Like that's what you guys told me in the commercial. That's all I'm doing.
Hell yeah.
But like right now I'm out here in Tullahoma for 2 weeks. We have a 1-year-old, we have a 16-year-old. The company's still functioning and I'm sitting out here. So
yeah. That's still a lot to take on. Well, good. I'm glad it's all going smooth for you.
If anyone's actually watching this far into it, the reason that this is going on here is the only place I can get service is sitting outside of a liquor store in my truck.
We wouldn't have it any other way, actually.
Yeah.
So this is perfect. Do you I'll get away from all that. I'm glad everything is going smooth, though. I'm glad Frontier is taking off. Kind of, it's going a lot better from what I see. It's going smooth. I see that with your podcast, you also join Counterculture, which, like we talked about, it's anti-hero, it's conduct unbecoming. Which, if you guys haven't, if you're listening at this point, I got Tyler. He just will be on the interview before this, and I got Reagan from Conduct Unbecoming. I think
Nice.
he's on in a couple episodes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep up, man. It all those guys are putting out good content, and they're actually not only are they putting out good content, but they're putting out stuff that matters to the world. That is like instead of the bullshit of people just there's this bad thing I think that became a podcast where it's not all against Joe Rogan, it's not against Sean Ryan. I think there became a status quo of just having people on and talking without questions, and I think you guys are getting after that, trying to find different answers in different outlets. So I think
Yeah,
that's really good.
I think I think you're right. I mean, there has to be questions. There has to be a reason. Like you can't just. I mean, just talking is fine. It's fun sometimes, but I mean, like for us, because I got so passionate about my regional politics, like bringing people like the Tennessee Libertarian Party on, like I, I that was the first time I met Josiah and Sam. They're absolutely amazing people. They're also fucking wild.
Oh yeah, they were. I mean, they were saying shit on there. I'm like, damn, they're really passionate about this shit. Like,
Yeah, they are super passionate, and they are doing stuff that really matters. I was like, well, and I one of the questions I asked them was like, well, how is the Libertarian Party really going to be a viable party when there's not really a unified platform on it aside from liberty. Um, and like they're very realistic about it. Like, well, we're not, but let us explain. We are not going to be a contending party to take seats, but let us tell you about why what we're doing is important and how we're doing it. And they explained it to me as far as like they are single. They take part in politics in uh, single issue
oh
legislation.
yes,
So
yeah,
like,
like the defending the guard thing.
yeah,
It was only that. It's not a combined thing where a bunch of
right,
bullshit gets thrown in.
exactly. So like that's they take part in lots of single issue things that they believe are important for. And again, this is Tennessee Libertarian Party. So for our state, our region, I was like, wow, that's super awesome. And the way that they do it, they are actually so stinking organized for a party that doesn't really have an organized platform. They are so passionate about the stuff that they're working on that they're amazing. And the way that they can articulate it and tell people all the details and how to get involved was, I think, really important message. If people are willing to listen. Yeah, just going on and talking at random is, you know, it works. I think for guys like you and me, and people that are starting out, it's sometimes tough to get. I mean, I'm very appreciative of all the guests that we have on, but you're like, okay, how do I get not to the next level of guests, but like if I see somebody that I really want to talk to that is, echelons above our viewership, like, can we get to them?
Yeah, yeah, that's like the hardest fucking part. I
Yeah.
inside baseball here. I was talking to Tyler over in Antihero. Me and him both started in our houses. Our
Yeah.
dads were like one of our first interviews. Like, while that's amazing, you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's not that I don't care about these people. I love having these conversations, but I want to get to that echelon of I want to talk to the people that are up here, and I
Mhm.
want to understand what the fuck is actually going on, because I feel like now it's such a niche group of top tier people. It's not gate guarded, but it's like you got to figure out what the fuck is going on just in general, whether it's
Yeah.
podcast or government or just general stuff. Like
I think,
uh sorry, you go.
I think for, guys that are doing what we're doing at the level that we're doing it, there's kind of this, like, nobody knows who Josiah Baker is. Again, the chairman of Tennessee Libertarian Party. So if I want people to hear all the valuable information that Josiah has to put out there is validity to getting, like, I don't know. Let's say I can get a U.S. representative to come on my podcast, and I can get that many viewers. If I can build this viewership, then I can have somebody like Josiah on there again, who is not a name that anyone would know, but like probably has better and more articulated information than that U.S. representative does. So like if you have to, you do have to, like you said, look at an echelon of like what level are these people working, what viewership do they have, what viewership will they bring to what we're doing, and more importantly, like what do I want to put in front of that viewership when I get it.
You. It's a you, man. You're a Green Beret. You started your own company. You had backlash from comments you made. You have your own platform that you're trying to put your message out on. I'm trying to make sure people understand what you're going after and where you're coming from to get that out there. So I completely agree. Do
Yeah.
you before we get off here, I wanted to dive into some personal stuff a little bit. We talked about kids with the school and stuff, and we talked about the masking thing. Where do you see, especially with Doge being involved, cutting everything, where do you see the education department going at this point?
I mean, I honestly hope it goes into the trash can. Um, we pulled our older son out of public school in the middle of 6th grade, I think, and then we started him at the Christian school in 7th grade. Uh, he's been seventh, eighth, ninth. He's currently a sophomore, so this is 4th year at the Christian school. And it's, I mean, honestly, the education that he's getting is no better than what he was getting education wise at public school. But he's not being indoctrinated with whatever gay stuff they're doing there, whatever DEI stuff they're doing. Um, and that's they're certainly not perfect over at the Christian school, but he's always been in school with other kids. So we kept him in school, but they weren't doing masking. They're not asking us for vaccine records. They're like pretty hands off with all that stuff. Uh, and he's 16. We also have a 1 year old. Right now, it's very unlikely that our 1 year old will ever go to, definitely will not go to public school. Um, if he is going to go to school, it wouldn't be till, probably 8th grade at the earliest. So meet some kids and then roll into high school with them, and that for that reason, it'd mostly just be for athletics, so that
Right.
he can get out there and do sports stuff with other kids as opposed to be stuck with his dad trying to play catch and never you know it'd mostly be for the athletic and social stuff with other kids. Yeah, I mean, a federal Department of Education should absolutely disappear. That should, look at how balkanized our states are becoming when it comes to just our values as far as the general population in each state. Like when we look at Tennessee versus Washington or Oregon, like yeah, if you look at rural Washington, rural Oregon, it's usually red, conservative farmers, rural areas. But if you just look at if you look at the overall voting, you know, uh, if you look at popular vote in these states, like they are blue states.
Yeah.
It's like we're diametrically opposed to each other as states. Like we are entering a balkanization period, and I don't think that the federal government should have dick all to say about how we raise our kids.
No, I completely agree with you on that part. My wife, uh she homeschooled our son for 2 years, homeschooled my
Yeah,
daughter for one, and then due to health issues, she actually had, and I'm active duty, so obviously I can't. She
yeah,
put him back in school. Well, we did. I won't say her. That's not on her. But
yeah,
put him back in school. But she got done with schooling in like 4 hours, and then
yeah.
could just take him to play, do whatever.
Yeah, go outside to the park, go to the
Yeah,
local zoo, go do stuff that actually
she
expands kids' minds.
Well, we lived on 5 acres back in Missouri, so we had goats. She'd milk them
Yeah,
every morning. She would make my son check the eggs for our
yeah,
chickens and ducks. Like, just a lot of stuff that is, I guess, some people like, if especially if you live in a city, you probably think it's dumb or you think it's not traditional. but they are life skills that are building. And especially with the world as it is important to understand all this shit, because it's
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
come to a fucking point where we're gonna need to know this stuff again. And
we
then
we
like,
are gonna we are gonna need to know it, and it's not just about knowing how to get the eggs, not just about knowing how to milk the goat, but it's also teaching kids caring and nurturing and responsibility. Like
yes,
you
100%.
actually
All
have to
those
go.
all those skills are, on face value, yeah, it looks like nothing, but it teaches them little skills like that.
Yeah,
Same thing with teaching my son how to shoot a gun when
yeah,
he's 6 years old, 7 years old. Like,
yeah,
I'm not teaching him because it's fun. I'm teaching him because that's a skill that he is going to need to use in life at certain points. Not to kill people necessarily. Fucking hope not. But I, you know, to bring home food for your family. I don't look at hunting ever really as like, I love hunting. Really don't look at it anymore as like looking for trophy bucks. That's fun,
yeah,
but it's bringing meat home to your family that
yeah,
you killed. It's healthy. It's unprocessed. It's good. Like,
yep,
I can't stand that whole mentality of like, kids don't need to know that shit. Yeah, they do, because eventually they become adults and they got to know that
yep,
stuff too.
yeah. We bring my older son to butcher the chickens and do all that stuff, and his first time out there is like, oh wow, that's violent and delicious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it sucks, but it's cool and it's
yeah.
good.
But no, I think I I mean, it's going to be wild to watch what happens with Elon and Doge. And I mean, can you really see Elon and Trump just staying hunky dory for 4 years? There's no
Yeah,
way.
after the first year they're like, "Oh, we're done. We're good."
Something.
No, it's going to get weird.
Yeah. So, but I mean, the fact the fact that stuff is being exposed, which anyone with two brain cells to rub together has to have known that government waste, fraud, and abuse is through the roof. But the fact that somebody's now finally being like, "Look, here are the numbers,"
You know, I
I think
hate
it's good.
I can't. Here's a big one I hate is I have a lot of liberal friends from college,
Yeah.
um, and they think they're like, jobs are being cut everywhere. Veterans are losing their jobs at the VA, and I'm like, good. Like, not not to shit on veterans, but some of those jobs are bullshit.
Yeah.
I know DA civilians that should not have a fucking job, and they do. And you're like, everyone hates them in the army, and they're like, well, it's a protected job. They're not going to get fired. And you're like,
Yep.
with this, I sure fucking hope so. This is insane.
No, I mean the purge has needed to happen for a long time. I don't know. I'm not at risk for losing a job, so I don't know how those firings, how those terminations are actually happening. I mean, I do know that I I don't know what percentage of full time government employees it is, but I know that a lot of them do nothing useful.
Yes.
Uh, and they know that, oh, I'm a federal employee. It takes an act of God to get rid of me. It doesn't. And somebody's finally doing it. Like everyone was just too afraid to upset anyone. I just don't know. Like, is the method that they're doing it the right method? Probably not. But also, like, whatever, rip it off like a band-aid. Let's just
Yeah,
be done.
yeah, that's what they're doing. They're ripping it off like a band-aid, and I don't, like you said, I don't necessarily agree with it 100% because it's funky. They got a guy that's not really, um he's not necessarily appointed by Congress to do any of this. He's just
No,
doing
but
it where it's like, but it's not a bad thing that he's doing.
yeah, I don't think. I think honestly, I think the lefties are like, he's not appointed by Congress. He's not elected. He's not this, this, and this. Like, that's a fucking dumb argument, though. Like, 99.99999% of the government is just bureaucrats that somebody has appointed or promoted, and Congress has never seen these people. Like, the president hasn't appointed most of them. They're just bureaucrats that have just been hanging out there forever. Like, we didn't vote for them. They weren't appointed. They weren't part of Biden's picks, Trump's picks, anyone's. They've just been leeches in whatever organization they've been in forever. So
I don't know if you commented on it or something. I thought you did, but somebody showed a picture of Lloyd Austin, or not. It wasn't a picture of Lloyd Austin. It was a picture of Hegseth shaking hands with dudes after PT when he went
oh
to
yeah,
Germany,
yeah,
and they're like, Lloyd Austin wore like 5 masks and didn't show up to work for a while.
yeah,
Hegseth doing PT with the boys, and this is the kind of leadership we want back.
yeah,
And people are mad about it. You're like, this is what we want. This is what the troops fucking want. Like they
yeah,
want somebody fucking involved. They want somebody putting out shit every day. Maybe it's not everything you agree with, but it's good. Like,
yeah. And I think it was on that same trip. That was over in Germany. Hextest was working out with dudes from 10th Group. It was on that same trip that he made a comment to whatever general was next to him. He's like, "Oh, don't take any offense, but I mean, I've got way more in common with troops than any of you guys do." Referring to all the generals who like,
oh yeah, he was like, yeah. He was like, it's like no offense, but I know these guys a lot more. Like, yeah, I saw
yeah,
that clip. Yeah, it was good.
and it's true. Like
He's
these,
a major. The most he was at was like a battalion or brigade S3 or something. Like, and
yeah,
he was reserve. So
yeah, he was a National Guard '04.
yeah, so he knows the boys. Like he
Yeah.
knows them well.
So, I mean, I'm happy to see Hegseth in there. I hope that he does a great job. I
Did you
know he's
see
gonna.
the new one, the Secretary of the Army?
Oh yeah, he was only an '03, I think.
Yeah, they just swore him in today. He was pretty young too, and then he ran
Yeah,
for Congress and failed, but he
yeah,
was Hegseth's on his campaign party or something.
yeah. And he's not a pointer too, which is awesome. So yeah, it's a breath of fresh air getting some junior guys in there that actually have relevant experience as opposed to, I don't know, board members of Raytheon. So I hope that they do well.
Yeah. Um. Finally, what do you last question. This kind of weird one. The LGBTQ stuff. It's been kind of crazy. The Army finally, I think they sent out the memo of they do not allow transgenders in the Army.
Yeah.
That they got to get out and all that stuff. Um, I think we have a mutual understanding that the transgender population may not be all it's cracked up to be, and that I think there's a lot of you're a lot more open about it. I still I can't describe it really well. I guess it's like I think there's a lot more to it than just this is what normal is. I think there's a lot of mental stuff going on. How do you feel about that now that they did that?
I mean, I'm thrilled that they put an end to. I'm thrilled that they put an end to allowing that mental illness to come into the Army. I'm thrilled that they said that they're not going to be paying for any more of the surgeries or transition hormones or any of that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Sorry,
No, you're good. I saw the lights.
Yeah, some crackhead is getting in a fight with his girlfriend here. Because I'm in the liquor store.
Because you're in a liquor store parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I'm thrilled that they ended the tranny stuff in the military. The fact that it was ever a thing is still disgusting to me. The fact that they tried to normalize it is disgusting to me. And like honestly, me saying that isn't like, yeah, F trannies. Like that's not it. It's the military is supposed to be the military is supposed to be focused on, protecting our country, protecting our constitution, and being this objective, like defensive and protective force for our nation. Not a social experiment, not a place for people to be like, oh, I want to do whatever stupid job, but I only want to do it because I know that TRICARE will pay for my tits. Like the fact that that was ever a thing to begin with, the fact that, so here's ironically, it was under the Trump administration, I believe, back in 2017, there was an 82-page mandatory like transgender troop awareness training.
Yep, I was there. I was
Yeah,
in during that
that
time. They
yeah,
told
that
us
every
all, they sent out this PDF to everyone, and they were like, you need to read this, send a thumbs up when you read it. Everyone just
yeah.
sent the thumbs up.
I was like, it's insanity. And that was under Trump's administration that, that somehow made it through and nothing was done about it. Uh, I do think that they need to take it one step further, and every single one of the trainees that is still in needs to be removed. Like, you know what? If you're at 16 years and you've chopped your dick off and you're running around with tits pretending to be a woman in uniform, like, you know what? You're going to get removed from the military. You're not going to get kicked out and left destitute. We are going to give you your. They've done this one every time that they've been downsizing. They have offered early retirements.
Yeah, they give
So
that
like,
separation pay or
yep,
whatever.
yeah, you're going to get an early retirement. You're going to get credited for X amount of time in service. You will start collecting your retirement right now at the prorated rate, but this experiment is done. And honestly, like, I think that's being very kind, considering how much time, money, and headache that they have caused for everyone around them in the military. But I think that is the next step that should be done. Is like that stupid Air Force Space Force '05 dude that's playing a chick that does nothing except for talk about how trannies are the most important thing in cybersecurity, blah blah blah. Like, why don't you talk about cybersecurity if you're a cybersecurity officer? How about that? No, they need to be force retired, like however long time in service they've done. They will get credited for it. They will start collecting their retirement pay at their rank, at their time in service. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. The experiment's done.
Yeah, I think the Army's over it in general. I'd say 80% is like, we don't have the time to deal with this shit. Just
No.
get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Nate, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I had a blast. I hope you did too.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, guys, thank you for listening, and I hope you actually learned something from this, whether it was the beginning, end, or middle. Like we had some good talks here. So thanks for
Yeah.
listening, guys, and take care.